Hi students, this is Dr. Spellman, and today we're going to talk about analogical reasoning from chapter 9.1 of the Hurley text. In that text, Hurley defines analogical reasoning as reasoning that depends on a comparison of instances. So what we're going to see here is that rather than arguing based on some sort of principle, an analogical reasoning is based on a comparison between two different things. Here's an example of an analogical argument. Logic and professional ethics are philosophy courses taught by Dr. Spellman, and they're a lot of fun. You can decide for yourself whether or not that premise is true, but let's just assume that it's true for now. Premise 2, food ethics is a philosophy class taught by Dr. Spellman. Conclusion, therefore food ethics is probably a lot of fun as well. Now what you see here in this argument is that we're sort of taking a few examples of different classes that Dr. Spellman teaches, philosophy classes Dr. Spellman teaches, logic, professional ethics on the one hand, and we're drawing some conclusion about food ethics on the other. Now each instance or item that's compared here is called an analog. So that's going to be logic, professional ethics, and food ethics. Those are the analogs. Now, the instances or items that serve as our evidence base are called the primary analogs. So the evidence base here is logic and professional ethics. They're the things that we know something about. The instance or item about we're drawing some conclusion is called the secondary analog. That's the thing we don't know anything about. We're sort of inferring something about that thing from the primary analogs. In this case, that's food ethics. That shows up in our conclusion. Now, the strength of an analogy is going to depend on a number of things, including the number of primary analogs and the diversity among them. So here we've got two primary analogs, logic and professional ethics, but if we had a number of others, maybe we also know something about food ethics or philosophy of law, some other philosophy classes that Dr. Spellman teaches, if we've got a larger evidence base, we'll be able to be more confident in our conclusion. Same if those classes are pretty diverse, right? So the more diversity we have amongst the kinds of classes that Dr. Spellman teaches, he also teaches math and history and social studies, and all of his classes are fun, then we're going to be more confident that other classes that he teaches are fun. The strength of the analogy also depends on the number of similarities between the primary and secondary analogs and the relevance of those similarities. So, what are we talking about when we're talking about the similarities? In this case, we've got two similarities between the primary and secondary analogs. So what is it that logic and professional ethics have and that food ethics also has? So what are the similarities between those primary and secondary analogs? In this case, there are two. They're both philosophy classes, right? So logic, professional ethics, philosophy classes. Food ethics is a philosophy class. The second one is that they're taught by Dr. Spellman. So logic and professional ethics taught by Dr. Spellman, food ethics taught by Dr. Spellman. The strength of the analogy also is going to depend on the nature and degree of disanalogy or difference between the primary and the secondary analogs. So we could imagine some difference between these two. Say we learn that logic and professional ethics are taught on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, while food ethics is taught on Tuesday and Thursday. So there we've got a disanalogy or difference between the primary analogs and the secondary analogs. Now the question is that difference an important one? Is it gonna have an impact? And ordinarily speaking, we might think, no, Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes or Tuesday, Thursday classes, whatever day the class occurs on, it's not going to affect how fun it is. But, maybe if we knew some additional evidence, maybe that Dr. Spellman works out in the morning on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and so he's more laid back, but when he's teaching on Tuesday, Thursday, he hasn't gotten his workout and so he's more uptight or something. I don't know, that's a bad example. But if we learn something that might give us reason to think that the day is going to have an effect, then that's going to matter. The strength of the analogy also depends on the specificity and or the strength of the conclusion. So here, the conclusion isn't very specific and it's kind of weak. So we get the conclusion that food ethics is probably a lot of fun. If the conclusion was it's definitely a lot of fun, right, we'd be less confident in that analogy. And if we sort of were more specific about the amount of fun that it was going to be, so logic and professional ethics are 8 units of fun, and food ethics is probably 8 units of fun as well. That's going to be more specific, and so the more specific it is, the less confident we can be in the analogy. So to summarize a bit, whether an argument like the preceding one is strong depends on the strength of the analogy, and the strength of an analogy depends on 6 different things. The number of primary analogs, and the more we have, the stronger the analogy. In this case, we've got 2 primary analogs. The strength of an analogy depends on the diversity among the primary analogs. The more diversity, the stronger the argument. In this case, logic and professional ethics are pretty diverse as far as philosophy classes go. Logic is not really dealing with, we're dealing with arguments, but we're not really dealing with content or material, just totally skills-based. Professional ethics is going to deal more with content and ethical theory. Logic isn't really about ethics, so they're kind of diverse. The number of similarities between the primary and secondary analogs. Again, as the number of similarities goes up, the analogy gets stronger. So in this case, we have 2 similarities: the subject, philosophy, and the professor, Dr. Spellman. The relevance of the similarities. So how relevant are these similarities to the thing we're trying to conclude about food ethics? So the thing we're trying to conclude, remember, is the class going to be fun? And then is the subject matter, is the professor, are those things relevant to the amount of fun that a class is? And I think here those are pretty relevant, right? People who like one class in a subject tend to like other classes in that subject. We also know that people who like one class by a professor tend to like other classes taught by that professor. So these similarities seem pretty relevant. Now, the other thing we're looking for, right, the nature and degree of disanalogy, the greater the degree, the more relevant the nature, the less strong, the weaker, right, the analogy is. So, while there's a difference in content between food ethics, some of these other courses, the difference isn't maybe especially significant. That's definitely when we look at professional ethics and food ethics, we might think, there's not much of a difference between these two. They're both ethics classes, and so not a big disanalogy there. Also, the specificity of the conclusion, right? So I've already said the conclusion is pretty weak, just that it's probably going to be fun. And that conclusion is weak, and so the weaker the conclusion, right, the stronger the analogy. All right, now at this point, right, I'd encourage you to turn to page 535, answer some of the practice problems. Be sure to check your answers when you're done with those. Now, I'm going to run through an example to sort of give you a sense for what you're looking for, and that might help you as you go through some of those. One thing that the problems are going to ask you is, does new information make the analogy stronger or weaker? And it's really just asking for an evaluation of, does it make it stronger or does it make it weaker? I think I'm going to encourage you to also identify why it becomes stronger or weaker. And so I've listed these 6 factors here that you want to be paying attention to, right? Number of primary analogs, diversity among the primary analogs, number of similarities, relevance of similarities, the nature and degree of disanalogy, and the specificity of the conclusion. So those are sort of the 6 things we're looking for. Does it affect those? If so, does that make it stronger or weaker? So let's look at an example. Harold needs to have his rugs cleaned, and his friend Veronica reports that Ajax Carpet Service did an excellent job on her rugs. From this, Harold concludes that Ajax will do an equally good job on his rugs. Now what we want to know is, how do these facts bear on Harold's argument? Here's one fact. Veronica hired Ajax several times, and Ajax always did an excellent job. Well, if we know that she hired Ajax several times, then we know that there are more primary analogs, right? There are a greater evidence base. Ajax always did an excellent job. Well, then that's good, right? That's going to make Harold's argument stronger. He's concluding that Ajax is going to do a good job on his rugs, and if they've done an excellent job every time, then we can be pretty confident of that. So I've said S over here on the left because that makes it stronger, and the reason it makes it stronger is because it increases the number of primary analogs. Okay, here's a new fact. Veronica's rugs are wool, whereas Harold's are nylon. Ooh, right, that's a disanalogy, right? That's a difference between these two cases. So that's going to weaken the argument. And again, that's because it's a disanalogy. Say we find out that Veronica's carpets never had any stains on them before they were cleaned, but Harold's have had several large stains. In that case, again, this is a disanalogy, so we're going to be less confident that this argument's a good one. A weaker analogy. Veronica always had her rugs cleaned in mid-October, whereas Harold wants his done a week before Easter. Now this one's a little bit trickier, right? I think, again, this is a disanalogy. And so, generally speaking, disanalogies are going to make the argument weaker. But we might wonder, like, is this really a relevant disanalogy? So, does the timing make an impact on how good the carpet cleaning service is? I think this is sort of a toss-up, right? In a way, yeah, the timing of the year may make a difference because, maybe the people working for Ajax are different people in the fall versus in the spring. But, there might be, it's probably the case that it doesn't make much of a difference that what time of the year they come. So, I think either answer would be fine. I've put that it's a weaker argument, there's a disanalogy, but I'm also pretty sympathetic to the case that this makes no difference, and that's an option that you might put as well. E. Harold knows of 6 additional people who've had their carpets cleaned by Ajax, and all 6 have been very pleased. Well, again, another more primary analog, 6 more people, that's going to make the argument stronger. And again, we're increasing the number of primary analogs. Let's say we find out that all 6 of those people own rugs made of different materials. So, wow, that's, now we've got, I think, a stronger argument. Again, not because of more primary analogs, but just because there's a greater diversity amongst the primary analogs. So that's stronger. Again, but because of a diversity among the primary analogs. Say we find out that all 6 people were born in Massachusetts. Well, how does that matter, right? It doesn't. So that's going to make no difference. Say we learn that Ajax has recently undergone a change in management. Ooh, that's going to lower our confidence in the analogy, right? We're going to have a weaker analogy because, again, there's a disanalogy here. There's a difference between the cases where these 7 people had their rugs cleaned under the previous manager, and now we've got a new manager. Say we find out that the Environmental Protection Agency recently banned the cleaning solution that Ajax was using for many years. Again, this is going to weaken the argument. Again, it's a disanalogy. Now this example, I'll note, has a lot of disanalogies, but other cases won't have quite so many disanalogies. We also haven't gotten any questions that point to additional similarities but that's something that you might get in other arguments. Finally, maybe Harold changes this conclusion to say that Ajax will get his carpets approximately as clean as Veronica's. Right? So earlier he said Harold concluded that Ajax will do an equally good job, but now Harold's changing his conclusion to state that Ajax will get his carpets approximately as clean as it has gotten Veronica's. I think that conclusion is a little bit weaker, right? And when we've got a conclusion that's a little weaker, we've got an argument that's a bit stronger. So that's going to make the argument stronger, and it's because of the specificity of the conclusion. All right, that's the end of our example. Hopefully that's helpful as you go and do some practice on your own.